Now, in July this year, the National Primary Health Care Development Agency said more than 14 million Nigerian girls have received protection through the human papillomavirus vaccination campaign. The agency described the achievement as a significant milestone in Nigeria's public health efforts to eliminate cervical cancer. Cervical cancer has been identified as a major health threat affecting sub-Saharan African women. We're now being joined by Emily Kobayashi, head of the HPV vaccine program at Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to discuss protecting African girls from cervical cancer, how to end the scourge, Nigeria's historic HPV vaccination achievement, and Africa's rising leadership in cervical cancer. Good afternoon. Many thanks for joining us here on Newsday.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here.
Of course. Now, tell us about the progress that's been made regarding HPV vaccine program, specifically in Nigeria.
Yes, Nigeria has made an incredible commitment to the HPV vaccine program. As you said, they began rolling out this vaccine in 2023, and already they've reached over 14 million girls. And the way they did this is we had top commitment from the highest political levels in government. We had a cross-society approach to delivering the vaccine in schools, communities, religious institutions, and markets. And we had an incredible effort on communication so that people had the right information and had the opportunity to make the decision to protect their daughters.
Very good, Emily. Now, what are the main challenges when it comes to prevention of cervical cancer?
So cervical cancer is prevented through two levels. First, we have vaccination, which prevents acquisition of the human papillomavirus vaccine, which is the cause of 99% of cervical cancers. And this vaccine is being prioritized for young girls aged 9 to 14. And then we also have a second prevention step, which is for women who haven't had the chance to be vaccinated, a screening step, which can catch early cervical cancers and they can be treated and cured on the spot. So in terms of vaccination, what we're talking about is preventing anyone, even before they've ever been exposed to the human papillomavirus, from getting it. And so what that means for the health system is that we have fewer precancers, fewer cancer cases, we have more resources available to dedicate to treatment and other aspects of the health system. So for countries that have introduced the HPV vaccine, say 20 years ago, they've already seen incredible declines in cervical cancer cases among the vaccinated girls. In some countries, as much as 90% or more. So that's the future for countries like Nigeria that are committing to the cervical cancer vaccine now.
Absolutely. Well, Emily, I'd like you to touch on some of the challenges that might have been encountered during this process, especially when dealing or interacting with conservative communities. How were you able to respond to vaccine hesitancy or misinformation, specifically around vaccination for HPV?
I think whenever you bring something new to the health system, it's very natural for parents and communities to have questions. And because the HPV vaccine targets girls and targets them at a bit older range than other vaccines, questions do come up. And so the key is to have an effective response where you're engaging people that are trusted and authentic communicators that are acceptable to those communities and giving them the right information. So during the campaign in Nigeria and elsewhere, we've had online influencers who are making videos, sometimes funny videos, about the vaccine to spread the word about what it is and what it does. But in conservative societies, it may mean working with local religious leaders and getting them bought into the opportunity to protect the people that they serve as religious leaders, or community health workers who have a strong grounding in the community. So it's about giving those people the information about the protective power of the vaccine, and then they translate it into the language and the context that makes sense for their own communities. And we've seen really good uptake in those of the vaccine, even in conservative places across Africa.
Indeed, Emily. I'd like us to reflect on the age groups that are most vulnerable to cervical cancer among women and why, you think?
Yeah, so cervical cancer is a cancer that develops in early adulthood. So many cases are in women as young as 30, 40. And so when we lose women at that age, we're losing a parent, we're losing a teacher, a leader in her community. And so it's really an incredible loss for the community as well as the families. And it's a cost to society because these are people that would be working and contributing to society. So we prevent this cancer early. We prevent it among girls who are younger before they've ever been exposed to the human papillomavirus. We've seen the vaccine has the highest efficacy in this age group, and we're guided by that science that the World Health Organization says that this is the group to target, so that those girls would be protected if they were ever exposed to the virus and would never develop cervical cancer.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of long term, the vaccine protects against cancer that develops decades later, as we understand. But how do you maintain political will and funding for such a long-term payoff?
Great question. And it really is going to rely on the leaders in Africa to continue to prioritize this vaccine. As Gavi, we will continue to provide the HPV vaccine. We have very high quality, very low cost HPV vaccines that are available to countries across Africa. These vaccines are purchased through co-financing between Gavi's contribution and the government's contribution. But in addition to the cost of the vaccine, there's also the cost of reaching 9 to 14-year-old girls where they are. We know that they don't come to the health facility. So where do we find them? We find them in schools. We find them in the community. And so the health system needs to include in its budget, in its planning, every year that they'll be reaching that year's group of 9-year-old and 10-year-old girls who are becoming eligible for the vaccine for the first time. That's what we need to see for that sustained commitment.
Indeed, Emily, you've given us an idea of specifically on Nigerian statistics when it comes to cervical cancer protection. But what's the continent Africa like in this regard?
Well, I think the first thing to realize is that Africa is the continent that's the hardest hit by cervical cancer. So if you look at the list of the top 20 countries in terms of cervical cancer rates, 19 of those countries are in sub-Saharan Africa. So this is absolutely critical to prevent in sub-Saharan Africa. But Africa is also leading the way on cervical cancer prevention. Today, we have 32 countries on the continent that have already introduced the HPV vaccine. And if you look at coverage levels of the vaccine, Africa is second only to the Americas around the world. So we're seeing that Africa leaders have made that commitment. They've responded to the crisis on the continent, and they are making progress in leading the world today.
Gavi, Emily, we understand the fantastic work that Gavi is doing regarding this vaccination. But is it too much to expect more from Gavi when it comes to helping women that have already been diagnosed with cervical cancer living in Africa? We understand about over 500,000 fall under that bracket.
Yes, so Gavi is the vaccine organization. We work closely with health systems across their vaccine portfolio, including the HPV vaccine. Countries look at the resources that Gavi provides and decide how they would like to use those resources to strengthen the delivery of immunization. We also see the introduction of HPV vaccine as an opportunity to educate the community about cervical cancer, because when the community knows about cervical cancer and the difficulties of cervical cancer, they're motivated to get the vaccine. But for us, our piece of it is vaccination. I hope that in the coming decades, as those cervical cancer rates go down, that will free up space in the health system, free up resources in the health system. But we need to address this now. There are women being diagnosed with cancer now and needing screening for cancer now. And that requires commitment from governments and other supporters.
Well, Emily, we'd like to thank you so much for the good work that you and Gavi are doing. Emily Kobayashi, head of the HPV vaccine program at Gavi, many thanks for joining us. Thank you. You're watching Newsday here on Arise News.